There are moments, strange, unexplainable moments, when everything inside you shifts without warning. One day, you are engaging, responding, showing up, and the next, something deep within you pulls back. Conversations feel heavy. Noise becomes unbearable. Even the people you once loved being around suddenly feel like too much. And you don't even have a reason you can explain. He is watching you in that moment. Not with confusion, but with knowing. For this is not withdrawal, this is summons. The voice of Archangel Michael does not always come like thunder. Sometimes, it comes like a silence so loud it grounds everything else. And what you are feeling right now, that sudden urge to be alone, to step back, to disconnect, is not weakness, and it is not something to fear. It is a command issued not from the world but from the throne room itself. You may have tried to fight it. You told yourself, maybe I'm overthinking. You forced yourself into conversations, into environments, into interactions that your spirit had already rejected. But something kept pulling you back, didn't it? Something kept whispering, go inward. Step away. Be still. And the more you ignored it, the heavier everything became. Because what you are experiencing is not emotional instability. It is spiritual interruption. He is interrupting your patterns. He is interrupting your access. He is interrupting the noise that has been drowning out your next instruction. Listen carefully, because this is where most people miss it. They think something is wrong with them. They think they are becoming distant, antisocial, disconnected. They start questioning themselves, doubting their emotions, wondering why they suddenly don't have the energy for things that once felt normal. But what if I told you nothing is wrong with you? What if I told you this shift didn't come from exhaustion, but from elevation? Because you cannot hear heaven clearly while constantly surrounded by noise. You cannot receive divine strategy while entertaining constant distraction. And you cannot step into what is next while still clinging to what is familiar. So he pulls you away, not to isolate you but to annihilate you. There is a difference, and it is everything. This is not abandonment. This is alignment. This is not loneliness. This is positioning. This is not loss. This is preparation. And deep down you already feel it. There's a strange peace hidden inside the silence, isn't there? Even when you don't understand it, even when it feels uncomfortable, there is something about being alone right now that feels necessary. Like your soul is finally catching its breath. Like something inside you is recalibrating, realigning, resetting. That is not coincidence. That is confirmation. Because when heaven is about to shift something in your life, it will first separate you from everything that cannot come with you. And that separation, it rarely feels gentle. It feels sudden. It feels confusing. It feels like everything and everyone is slowly fading out of reach. But what you don't see yet is this. You are not being removed from people. You are being removed from interference. There are conversations you cannot hear unless you are alone. There are revelations that cannot reach you unless you are still. There are instructions that cannot be trusted to crowded environments. So he draws you inward. Bosu. Wider. Deeper. And yes, it may feel uncomfortable right now. Yes, it may feel unfamiliar. Yes, it may even feel like you're losing something. But what if you're not losing anything at all? What if you are being called into something sacred, something set apart, something that only a few are chosen to experience? Because not everyone is pulled into silence like this. Not everyone is trusted with stillness. Not everyone is called into the hidden place. But you were. And that changes everything. So do not rush to fill the silence. You not run back to noise just to feel normal again. Do not override what your spirit is clearly telling you. Because this moment, this exact shift you are feeling, is not random. It is intentional. It is divine. It is urgent. And it is only the beginning of what heaven is about to reveal to you. You were not pulled away to be empty, you were pulled away to be filled. Type "I am ready" for the silence in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1717 is now surrounding you. There is always a whisper before the wilderness. It does not arrive loudly. It does not demand attention in a way the world understands. It comes softly, almost too softly. And that is why so many miss it. But you are beginning to notice it now. A subtle nudge. That quiet resistance when you try to engage in things that once felt natural. That inner voice that doesn't shout but persists. It repeats itself in moments when you are alone, in pauses between conversations, in the stillness before sleep. He is speaking to you there, and what you are feeling is not random. It is the beginning of divine withdrawal. Archangel Michael stands as a witness to this transition, not as one who forces you into isolation, but as one who guards the sacred space you are being led into. Because before every elevation, there is a wilderness. Before every transformation, there is a withdrawal. Before every clear instruction, there is a quieting of the noise that once surrounded you. And the whisper always comes first. You may have noticed it in small ways at first. A lack of interest in conversations that once consumed your time. A sudden awareness of how draining certain environments feel. A sensitivity to energy, to tone, to presence that you never paid attention to before. It is as if something within you has awakened, and now it cannot tolerate what it once accepted. That is not disconnection. That is discernment being activated. The whisper is not asking you to run away from people. It is asking you to return to yourself. To return to a place where your spirit can finally hear without interference. Because for too long, your attention has been scattered. Your energy hath been divided. Your focus has been pulled in directions that were never meant to carry your future. So the whisper begins to redirect you. Step back. Be still. Not everything needs your presence. And yet, part of you resists it, doesn't it? Because withdrawal feels unfamiliar. It feels like you are stepping away from what you've always known. It feels like you are losing connection, losing rhythm, losing control over what is happening around you. But what if this is not about losing control? What if this is about releasing control so something higher can take over? Because the wilderness is not a place of abandonment. It is a place of preparation. And you cannot enter it while still clinging to constant noise, constant validation, constant interaction. The whisper knows this. Heaven knows this. That is why the call to withdraw always feels like a gentle pull before it becomes a necessary shift. You were never meant to hear the next instruction in a crowded space. You were never meant to receive clarity while constantly responding to everyone else's expectations. And so, the whisper becomes more consistent, more noticeable, more impossible to ignore. You start to feel out of place in environments that once felt comfortable. You start to sense that certain conversations no longer align with where you are going. You begin to see patterns, behaviors, and energies that were always there, but now you cannot unsee them. That is not coincidence. That is revelation. And revelation always precedes separation. Because once you see clearly, you cannot remain the same. Once you feel the truth, you cannot go back to pretending. Once the whisper reaches your spirit, it begins to rewire your desires, your responses, your boundaries. This is where many people become uncomfortable. They try to silence the whisper. They distract themselves. They force themselves back into spaces that no longer fit. But the more they resist, the louder the discomfort becomes. Not because something is wrong, but because something is trying to lead them out. You are being led, not pushed, not abandoned. Led. There is a path unfolding in front of you, but it cannot be revealed all at once. It is revealed in layers, in moments, in stillness. And the only way to walk it is to trust the whisper before you understand the wilderness. Because the wilderness will test what the whisper reveals. It will ask you to sit with yourself, to confront what has been avoided, to release what have been held onto out of habit, not purpose. And that process begins now, with this quiet, persistent urge to step away. Do not dismiss it. Do not explain it away. Do not rush to replace it with noise. Because what feels like a withdrawal is actually an invitation into a space where clarity will replace confusion, where peace will replace pressure, where direction will replace distraction. And you will look back at this moment, the moment when the whisper first became undeniable, and you will realize it was not asking you to leave something behind. It was guiding you toward something sacred. Type "I trust the whisper" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 2020 is now activated around your spirit. There is a moment in this journey where the silence deepens and what once felt like a gentle whisper now begins to feel like a firm separation. This is where confusion often rises, because what you are experiencing now does not just feel like distance, it feels like loss. People become less responsive. Connections begin to fade. Invitations decrease. Conversations feel forced or incomplete. And in the quiet of your thoughts, a question forms that you may not even want to admit. Why am I being pushed away? But hear this clearly. This is not rejection. This is redirection. And Archangel Michael stands in this moment not as a distant observer, but as a guardian of your separation, ensuring that what is being removed from your life does not return prematurely. Because what feels like people stepping away is often heaven stepping in. You must understand something deeper now. Not every distance is a denial. Not every closed door is a punishment. Not every silence is abandonment. Some separations are divine instructions. Because there are seasons where proximity becomes dangerous to your purpose. Seasons where familiarity begins to interfere with transformation. Seasons where the voices around you, even if well-meaning, begin to dilute the clarity that heaven is trying to establish within you. And so, the separation begins. Not loudly, not grammatically, but unmistakably. You start to feel it in your spirit before you see it in your surroundings. The discomfort grows. The alignment fades. The energy shifts. And suddenly, you realize that you no longer fit where you once belonged. This is where many people misinterpret the moment. They internalize it. They assume they have done something wrong. They question their worth, their value, their place in the lives of others. But this was never about your worth. This was always about your direction. Because you cannot carry everyone into a season they were never assigned to enter. And that truth is not easy to accept. There are people you love who cannot go where you are going. There are connections you value that cannot survive the version of you that is emerging. There are environments that once nurtured you but now restrict you. And the moment you begin to outgrow them, the separation feels personal even when it is spiritual. This is why it hurts. This is why it feels confusing. This is why you are tempted to hold on, to fix it, to return things to the way they were. But what if the way it was never meant to continue? What if the discomfort you feel is not a sign to go back, but a signal to move forward? Because separation is not about taking something from you. It is about making space within you. Space for clarity. Space for identity. Space for truth to take root without interference. And yes, that space can feel empty at first. But that happiness is not meant to remain empty. It is meant to be filled with something higher, something aligned, something intentional. This is why heaven removes before it replaces. Because if everything stayed the same, you would never fully step into what is next. You would remain partially attached, partially present, partially transformed. But partial transformation cannot sustain a full calling. So the separation becomes necessary. Even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels misunderstood, even when it feels like rejection. But it is not rejection. It is protection. Protection from environments that no longer support your growth. Protection from voices that cannot understand your evolution. Protection from patterns that would pull you back into a version of yourself that you have already outgrown. And here is what you must hold on to in this moment. If it is truly meant for you, it will not require you to shrink to keep it. If it is aligned with your purpose, it will not resist your growth. If it belongs in your next season, it will meet you there, without confusion, without force, without compromise. So do not chase what is naturally creating distance. Do not force what is quietly falling away. Do not interpret every separation as a loss, because some things are not being taken from you. They are being released from you. And there is a difference, a powerful difference, one that you will only fully understand once you allow the process to unfold without resistance. You are not being excluded. You are being extracted. Extracted from what could no longer carry your future. Abstracted from what would have limited your expansion. Abstracted from what felt comfortable but was no longer correct. And yes, it takes courage to accept this. It takes strength to remain in the silence without reaching back for what is familiar. But this is where your transformation deepens. This is where your identity stabilizes. This is where you begin to stand without needing constant validation from what surrounds you. Because what is being built within you now cannot depend on what is being removed around you. Trust this process, even when it feels unclear, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels like you are walking alone. Because you are not alone. You are being led. Type "I accept the separation" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 3030 is now activated around your path. And as you stand in this sacred separation, understand this. Every time you help carry this message forward, you become a vessel through which light reaches another soul still trapped in confusion. This is not about supporting a channel. This is about igniting revelation in hearts that are still searching for truth. The word declares, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." And today, that bread is this message of divine alignment. I feel the call within me to invite you. Step into this moment, and sow into this mission through Super Thanks or the PayPal link waiting in the description, and QR code. What you release now becomes a seed that heaven multiplies, touching lives you may never see but eternally impact. Do not delay this act, for obedience in moments like this opens doors that hesitation keeps closed. As you give, may your path be strengthened, your clarity increased, and your spirit anchored deeper in divine purpose. Act now, because this moment is not ordinary, and your response is part of something greater. There comes a point in this process where it is no longer just about stepping away, it becomes about everything around you growing quiet in ways you did not expect. It is not only that you desire silence. Silence begins to surround you. The calls reduce. The messages slow down. The conversations that once filled your days begin to disappear. Even the environments that used to feel alive now feel strangely distant, almost muted, as if something unseen has pressed a pause button on your external world. And in that stillness, a question rises again. Why does everything feel so quiet? But this is not emptiness. This is intentional silence. Because when heaven prepares to speak clearly, it first removes the competition. Archangel Michael does not only guard your path, he enforces the quiet necessary for you to hear what is about to be revealed. Because there are moments when your environment becomes too loud for truth to reach you. Too many voices, too many opinions, too many distractions competing for your attention. And even if those voices are not harmful, they can still be disruptive to divine clarity. So the noise had to break. Not because everything around you was wrong, but because everything around you was too much. Too much input. Too much influence. Too much interference. You were hearing everything except what truly mattered. And so, the silencing begins. It may feel sudden. It may feel uncomfortable. It may even feel unnatural, like something is missing. But what you are actually experiencing is a sacred clearing. A removal of layers that once filled your time but no longer serve your direction. Because clarity does not come in chaos. It comes in stillness. And stillness cannot exist where noise is constantly invited. You see, there are things heaven needs to show you that cannot be explained through conversation. There are truths that cannot be filtered through other people's perspectives. There are instructions that require your full attention, your full presence, your full awareness. But how can you hear them if your environment is always speaking? How can you receive direction if your focus is constantly divided? How can you discern truth if your thoughts are always influenced by external noise? So the noise had to break. And when it does, it reveals something deeper, something many try to avoid. It reveals you, without distraction, without interruption, without escape. And this is where the process intensifies. Because silence does not just remove noise around you, it amplifies what is within you. Every thought becomes louder. Every emotion becomes clearer. Every unresolved feeling begins to surface. And this is not accidental. This is purification. Because before you can move forward, you must become aware of what has been sitting within you unnoticed. The distractions once kept it hidden. The noise once kept it suppressed. But now, in the quiet, everything rises to the surface. Not to overwhelm you, but to release you. There are beliefs that no longer align. There are patterns that no longer serve. There are attachments that quietly shaped your decisions. And all of it must be seen before it can be transformed. This is why silence can feel uncomfortable at first. Because it removes your ability to escape yourself. But this is also why it is necessary. Because transformation does not happen through distraction. It happens through awareness. And awareness requires stillness. You are not being punished by silence. You are being positioned by it. Positioned to hear clearly. Positioned to think deeply. Positioned to see truth without distortion. And once you begin to embrace this silence instead of resisting it, something powerful begins to happen. Peace replaces restlessness. Clarity replaces confusion. Direction replaces uncertainty. Not because everything outside has changed, but because everything within has aligned. This is the moment where you begin to understand. The silence was never meant to isolate you. It was meant to introduce you to a level of awareness you could not access before. And once you reach that level, you will never crave noise the same way again. You will become more selective, more intentional, more protective of your energy, your focus, your environment, because you will know what it costs to hear clearly, and you will not allow unnecessary noise to take that away from you again. So do not rush this silence. Do not try to fill it prematurely. Do not mistake it for something missing, because nothing is missing. Everything is being realigned. Everything is being cleared. Everything is being prepared. And what comes after this silence will carry a clarity you have never experienced before. Type "I embrace the silence" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 4040 is now activated around your mind and spirit. There is a delicate line in this journey, a line so subtle that if you are not paying attention, you may misinterpret what is happening within you. Because what you are experiencing right now can feel like loneliness, but it is not the kind of loneliness the world understands. It feels quiet. It feels empty at times. It feels like something is missing. And yet there is also something else present that you cannot fully explain. A stillness, a depth, a presence. This is where the confusion begins. Because loneliness and divine solitude can feel similar on the surface, but they are fundamentally different at their core. Loneliness drains you. Solitude restores you. Loneliness makes you feel abandoned. Solitude reminds you that you are being held. Loneliness creates desperation for noise. Solitude removes the need for it. And right now, you are being taught the difference. Archangel Michael stands as a witness in this space, not allowing you to confuse what is sacred with what is empty. Because the enemy of your clarity would prefer that you label this moment incorrectly. It would prefer that you call this loneliness, so you rush to escape it. But this is not loneliness. This is divine solitude, and there is purpose in it. You see, loneliness is rooted in disconnection. It comes from feeling unseen, unheard, unsupported. It pulls your energy outward, searching for something to fill the void. It makes you feel like you need someone else to feel whole. But divine solitude works differently. It pulls your awareness inward. It begins to show you that what you were searching for externally was always meant to be established internally first. That sense of peace you were hoping to receive from others. That validation you were hoping someone would give you. That clarity you were expecting from conversations. All of it begins to form within you during this time. And that is why it feels unfamiliar. Because you have spent so much of your life interacting outwardly, responding, engaging, connecting. But now, you are being asked to sit with yourself in a way you never have before. To listen, to observe, to understand your own thoughts without interruption. And that can feel uncomfortable at first. Because when you are used to noise, silence feels like absence. When you are used to constant interaction, stillness feels like isolation. When you are used to external validation, internal awareness feels unfamiliar. But this is where the shift begins. Because solitude is not removing connection from your life. It is redefining it. It is teaching you that connection does not always mean presence. That understanding does not always come through conversation. That peace does not always come from being surrounded. Sometimes, the deepest connection you will ever experience happens when you are alone. Not because you are by yourself, but because you are finally aligned with yourself. This is why there are moments in this silence where you feel something unexpected. Moments where everything feels calm without reason. Moments where your mind slows down. Moments where your breathing feels deeper, your thoughts feel clearer, your presence feels grounded. That is not loneliness. That is alignment. And the more you allow yourself to remain in this space without labeling it as something negative, the more you begin to understand its value. Because solitude is where identity stabilizes. It is where you stop adapting to environments and start understanding who you are without them. It is where your decisions become intentional instead of reactive. It is where your sense of self is no longer dependent on constant interaction. And this is important, because the version of you that is being developed right now cannot be built in noise. It cannot be shaped by external expectations. It cannot rely on constant reassurance. It must be grounded, steady, self-aware. And solitude is the environment that allows that to happen. But here's where you must be careful. Do not confuse the discomfort of adjustment with the pain of loneliness. They are not the same. You are not hurting because you are alone. You are adjusting because you are growing. And growth often feels unfamiliar before it feels natural. So when those moments come, when the silence feels heavy, when the urge to reach for noise returns, when the mind tries to convince you that something is missing, pause. Observe it. But do not react to it. Because not every feeling requires action. Some feelings are simply part of the transition. And this is a transition. From external dependence to internal stability. From scattered attention to focused awareness. From seeking validation to standing in clarity. And once this shift completes, something remarkable happens. You no longer fear being alone. You no longer rush to fill silence. You no longer depend on constant interaction to feel grounded. Because you have discovered something most people never fully understand. Being alone does not mean being empty. It can mean being full. Full of clarity. Full of peace. Full of presence. And once you experience that, you will never confuse solitude with loneliness again. Type "I understand the difference" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 5050 is now activated within your spirit. There is something happening within you right now that you cannot fully see, but you can feel it. It is subtle, yet undeniable. A shift, a cleansing, a quiet unraveling of things that once felt like part of who you were, and yet now they no longer fit the same way. This is not confusion. This is detox. Because when heaven calls you into isolation, it is never just to separate you from people. It is to separate you from what has been living within you unnoticed. Archangel Michael does not only guard your path externally, he stands watch over what is being removed internally. Because what is leaving your spirit right now is not random. It is not accidental. It is intentional purification. There are things you picked up along the way, beliefs, fears, emotional patterns, silent agreements that were never meant to stay. They were absorbed through environments, through conversations, through experiences that shaped how you see yourself and how you respond to the world. And for a long time, you carried them without questioning them. But now they are being exposed. And exposure always feels uncomfortable. You may notice it in your thoughts first. Old ways of thinking that once felt normal now feel heavy. Reactions you used to have now feel out of place. Certain behaviors begin to feel unnatural, even though they were once automatic. It is as if something within you is rejecting what it once accepted without resistance. That is not inconsistency. That is cleansing. Because detox is not always visible, it is felt. It feels like tension between who you were and who you are becoming. It feels like a quiet resistance to old patterns. It feels like discomfort when you try to return to familiar ways of thinking or behaving. And sometimes it feels like emotional heaviness rising to the surface without a clear reason. But there is always a reason. Because what you are feeling is not being created. It is being released. There are emotions that were buried, now surfacing. There are fears that were suppressed, now dissolving. There are attachments that quietly shaped your decisions, now loosening their hold. And all of this is happening because your spirit can no longer carry what does not align with where you are going. You are being lightened. Lie weak and lighten. Freed from weight you didn't even realize you were holding. But here is where most people misunderstand this process. They think something is wrong when discomfort appears. They think they are regressing when emotions surface. They think they are losing control when old patterns begin to break apart. But detox is not regression. It is release. And release is rarely comfortable. Because you cannot let go of something that has lived within you without feeling it leave. Every belief that is being removed had roots. Every pattern that is breaking once had purpose. Every attachment that is dissolving once felt necessary. And so, when they begin to leave, there is a moment of tension, a moment where your system adjusts to the absence of what it once relied on. This is why you may feel moments of emotional intensity, moments of reflection, moments where you question things you never questioned before. But do not fear these moments. Do not resist them, because they are not here to harm you. They are here to free you. You are not breaking down. You are breaking away. Breaking away from limitations that once defined you. Breaking away from responses that no longer represent you. Breaking away from internal noise that once shaped your decisions. And the more you allow this process to unfold without interference, the clearer you will become. Because detox creates space. Space where clarity can enter. Space where peace can settle. Space where your true identity can begin to stabilize without distortion. But here is what you must remember during this phase. Do not rush to replace what is being removed. Do not fill the space prematurely. Do not reach back for what is leaving just because the absence feels unfamiliar. Because what is leaving was never meant to stay. And what is coming requires that space to be empty first. This is why the isolation continues. Because detox requires time. It requires stillness. It requires an environment where nothing new is being added while everything old is being cleared. And that process cannot happen in noise. It cannot happen in constant interaction. It cannot happen while you are distracted. It happens here, in the quiet, in the stillness, in the separation you are currently walking through. And once this detox completes, you will notice something undeniable. You will think differently. You will respond differently. You will feel lighter, clearer, more grounded. Not because something was added to you, but because so much has been removed from you. And that is the power of this phase. It does not build you by adding more. It builds you by removing what was never truly you to begin with. To trust this process, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels unfamiliar, even when it feels like everything inside you is shifting at once. Because it is, and it is happening for a reason. You are being refined. You are being cleared. You are being prepared. Type "I release what no longer serves me" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 6060 is now activated within your spirit. There comes a moment in this journey where something within you stops resisting the silence and begins to surrender to it. The discomfort softens. The urge to escape fades. And in its place, something new begins to take form, quietly, steadily, intentionally. This is where the reset begins. Not the kind of reset the world talks about, where you change routines or try something new. No, this is deeper than that. This is a sacred reset. A rebuilding that does not happen on the surface, but at the very core of who you are. Because once the detox has cleared what no longer belongs, something must take its place. And that something is alignment. Archangel Michael stands not only as a protector during this phase, but as a witness to your reconstruction. Because what is happening now is not visible to others. It is not something you can explain easily. It is happening beneath the surface, within your thoughts, your perception, your sense of identity. And this rebuilding requires silence, because you cannot rebuild something sacred in a space filled with constant interruption. You cannot establish clarity while surrounded by conflicting voices. You cannot redefine who you are while still anchored to who you were. So heaven keeps you here in this quiet place, not to leave you empty, but to rebuild you correctly. Piece by piece, layer by layer, thought by thought. You may begin to notice it in subtle ways. Your thinking becomes slower, but clearer. Your reactions become calmer, but more intentional. Your decisions feel less rushed and more grounded. This is not stagnation. This is stabilization. Because for the first time, you are not reacting to everything around you. You are responding from within you. And that shift changes everything. The sacred reset is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming who you were always meant to be, without distortion, without the noise, without the influence of environments that shaped you in ways that no longer align. And this process takes time, because what is being rebuilt is not temporary. It is foundational. Your sense of self is being restructured. Your awareness is being sharpened. Your inner voice is becoming stronger than external noise. And this is necessary for where you are going, because the next phase of your life will require a version of you that is not easily shaken, not easily influenced, not easily distracted. And that version of you can only be built here, in silence. There are truths you are beginning to see more clearly now, patterns you are recognizing without effort, boundaries you are understanding without explanation. This is not something you learned overnight. This is something that is being rebuilt within you through this process. And the more you allow it, the more stable you become. Because the sacred reset is not just about removing what was wrong. It is about establishing what is right. Establishing clarity where there was confusion. Establishing peace where there was pressure. Establishing direction where there was uncertainty. And once these things take root, they do not leave easily. They become part of how you move, part of how you think, part of how you respond to everything that comes next. But here is what you must understand during this phase. Do not rush the rebuilding. Do not try to force clarity before it naturally forms. Do not expect immediate answers to everything you are processing. Because this reset is not about speed. It is about accuracy. It is about building something within you that will last. Something that will support you when everything around you begins to move again. And it will move again. The noise will return. The interactions will increase. The opportunities will appear. But when they do, you will not be the same. Because you will be grounded in a way you were not before. You will be clear in a way you were not before. You will be stable in a way that cannot be easily disrupted. And that is the purpose of this phase. To rebuild you so completely that when you step back into the world, nothing external can undo what has been established internally. So remain here. Remain patient. Remain open. Because what is being built within you right now is preparing you for everything that comes next. You are not waiting. You are becoming. Type "I accept the reset" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 7070 is now activated within your foundation. There is a truth about this season that many are not prepared for, and it is this: silence does not mean the absence of activity. In fact, some of the most intense battles you will ever face happen when everything around you appears still. Because when the noise fades and the distractions are removed, you are no longer just sitting in peace. You are standing in awareness. And awareness exposes what was once hidden. This is where the battle begins. Not externally, internally. Archangel Michael does not step away in this phase, he steps closer. Because the quiet you are in right now is not only a place of rebuilding, it is also a place of confrontation. A place where everything that once operated unnoticed must now face the light of your awareness. You may have felt it already. Moments where your thoughts become louder than expected. Moments where doubt tries to re-enter. Moments where old fears resurface without warning. Moments where your mind begins to question everything, your path, your decisions, your direction. And in those moments, it can feel like something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. You are encountering resistance. Because every time you move closer to clarity, something will attempt to pull you back into confusion. Every time you step into awareness, something will try to reintroduce distraction. Every time you begin to stabilize internally, something will attempt to destabilize you mentally. This is not coincidence. This is opposition. And it does not show up the way you might expect. It does not always come through people. It does not always come through external situations. Sometimes it comes through your own thoughts, through subtle suggestions, through quiet doubts, through familiar fears that once had power over you. This is why the battle feels so personal, because it is happening within your own mind, and that is where it is most effective, if you are not aware of it. But now you are aware. And awareness changes everything. Because once you recognize that not every thought belongs to you, you stop identifying with everything that passes through your mind. You begin to observe instead of react. You begin to question instead of accept. You begin to separate truth from distortion. And that is where your strength begins to form. Because the battle is not about eliminating thoughts. It is about choosing which ones you allow to take root. You will notice that certain thoughts try to repeat themselves. Certain doubts try to linger. Certain fears try to readapt. But repetition does not equal truth. It simply means persistence. And persistence is often mistaken for reality. But you must understand this. Just because a thought is loud does not mean it is valid. Just because a feeling is intense does not mean it is accurate. Just because something appears repeatedly does not mean it is meant to stay. This is the testing ground, the place where your awareness is strengthened, the place where your discernment becomes sharper, the place where you learn to stand without being moved by every internal shift. And this is why isolation is necessary. Because you cannot develop this level of discernment in constant distraction. You cannot recognize internal patterns while always focused externally. You cannot strengthen your mind while constantly reacting to everything around you. So the battle happens here, in the quiet, where you are forced to see clearly, to choose consciously, to stand intentionally. And the more you stand, the more stable you become. The more you observe without reacting, the less power these thoughts hold. The more you refuse to engage with what does not align, the weaker those patterns become, until eventually they fade. Not because they were forced out, but because they were no longer fed. And that is the key. This battle is not won through force. It is won through awareness and non-engagement, through understanding what deserves your attention and what does not. Because your attention is your power, and whatever you give it to grows. So during this phase, be mindful, not fearful, not reactive, just aware. Because you are not under attack in the way you think. You are being trained. Trained to recognize truth without confusion. Trained to remain steady without external validation. trained to hold your ground without being pulled in every direction. And once this training completes, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes quieter. Your thoughts become clearer. Your reactions become intentional. Not because the world changed him, but because you did. And that is the victory. Type "I stand in awareness" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 8080 is now activated around your mind and spirit. And as you stand firm in this quiet battle, understand this: every time you choose to support this mission, you are placing light into someone else's darkness, someone who is still fighting silently without guidance. This is not about giving to a platform. This is about fueling a divine movement that reaches souls at their breaking point. The word declares, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy," and your seed today becomes a harvest of healing in another life. I feel led to say this clearly. Step into this moment and release your offering through super thanks or the PayPal link waiting in the description and QR code. What you give now becomes a river that flows beyond you, touching hearts you may never meet but eternally impact. Do not hesitate, because obedience in this moment aligns you with a greater purpose already unfolding. As you act, may your path be strengthened, your discernment sharpened, and your spirit elevated. Move now. This is your moment to respond. There is a shift that begins to happen after you have endured the silence, after you have faced the internal battle, after you have allowed the noise to fall away without rushing to replace it. It is subtle at first, almost easy to overlook, but once you notice it, you cannot unnotice it. The voice becomes clearer, not louder, clearer. And there is a difference. Because clarity does not compete for your attention. It arrives when nothing else is competing. Archangel Michael does not raise his voice to be heard. He aligns your environment so that you can finally recognize what has been speaking to you all along. Because the truth is, guidance was never absent from your life. Direction was never withheld. The problem was never that heaven was silent. The problem was that there was too much noise to hear it. But now that noise has been removed, and what remains is something steady, consistent, precise. You may begin to notice it in your thoughts, but it feels different from the thoughts you used to have. It does not rush. It does not pressure. It does not create anxiety or confusion. It comes with a calm certainty, even when it challenges you, even when it asks you to move differently than you are used to. This is how you begin to recognize it. Because truth does not feel chaotic. It feels grounded. It may not always feel comfortable, but it feels clear. And clarity carries a certain weight to it. A stillness that does not need validation. A knowing that does not need explanation. This is the voice you are learning to hear now. Not through external confirmation. Not through constant conversation. But through direct awareness. And this changes how you move. Because now, instead of reacting to everything around you, you begin to pause. You begin to listen. You begin to observe what aligns with that inner clarity and what does not. And something remarkable happens. Decisions become easier. Not because every option is obvious, but because your discernment has sharpened. You no longer need to overanalyze everything. You no longer need to seek constant reassurance. Because you can feel the difference between what is aligned and what is not. And this is the result of the silence you have been walking through. This is why it was necessary. Because you cannot develop this level of clarity in constant distraction. You cannot recognize this voice while your attention is divided. You cannot trust your inner knowing while constantly depending on external input. So the silence trained you. The isolation refined you. The stillness aligned you. And now you are beginning to hear clearly. But here is what you must understand moving forward. Clarity requires protection. Just because you can hear now does not mean you can return to the same level of noise without consequence. Because the same distractions that once clouded your awareness will attempt to re-enter. The same environments that once diluted your clarity will try to pull you back into old patterns. The same external influences that once shaped your thinking will try to compete for your attention again. And this is where your responsibility begins. You must become selective, intentional, protective of your focus, your energy, your environment. Because what you have gained in this silence can be lost if you do not guard it. Not permanently, but enough to create confusion again. And you have already moved beyond that. You have already experienced what clarity feels like. You have already recognized the difference between noise and truth. So now, you must honor that awareness. You must choose environments that support it, conversations that respect it, spaces that do not overwhelm it. Because clarity is not something you force. It is something you maintain. And maintenance requires intention. But as you continue to protect this space, something even deeper begins to form. Trust. Not in others. Not in circumstances. But within yourself. You begin to trust what you feel. Trust what you sense. Trust what you know without needing constant confirmation. And that trust becomes your foundation. Because when you trust your clarity, you move differently. You hesitate less. You second-guess less. You align faster. And this is what prepares you for what comes next. Because the next phase of your journey will not allow you the luxury of confusion. It will require decisiveness, confidence, alignment, and all of that is built here, in this space where you have learned to hear without distraction. So do not take this lightly. Do not dismiss what you are experiencing, because this clarity is the beginning of a new way of living, a way where you are no longer led by noise, but guided by truth. Type "I hear" with clarity in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 9090 is now activated within your awareness. There is something happening now that goes beyond silence, beyond clarity, beyond even the battles you have faced in this quiet place. It is deeper than your thoughts, deeper than your emotions. It is happening at the level of identity. You are changing, not in a surface-level way, not in a temporary way, but at the core of who you are. And the shift is irreversible, because once identity begins to transform, everything else must follow. Archangel Michael stands as a witness to this transformation, not interfering, not forcing, but guarding the process as your old self quietly dissolves and your true self begins to emerge. Because this is not about becoming someone new. It is about uncovering who you were always meant to be before the noise, before the influence, before the adaptation. And that is why this phase feels so unfamiliar. Because you are no longer operating from old patterns. You are no longer reacting the same way. You are no longer thinking the same way. Things that once triggered you no longer hold the same power. Things that once excited you no longer feel aligned. Things that once defined you no longer feel accurate. And that can feel disorienting at first. Because when identity shifts, it creates a temporary gap, a space between who you were and who you are becoming. And in that space, nothing feels fully settled. You are no longer your past, but you are not yet fully comfortable in your future. You are in between. And this in between is where transformation solidifies. Because here, you are not being influenced by what was, and you are not rushing into what will be. You are simply becoming. And becoming requires space. It requires patience. It requires a willingness to sit in the unknown without trying to force certainty. Because identity is not something you decide overnight. It is something that forms through awareness, through clarity, through alignment. And all of those have been developing within you during this season. You may begin to notice that you are more selective now, more intentional, more aware of what aligns and what does not. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. You no longer feel the need to fit into spaces that do not reflect who you are becoming. You no longer feel comfortable shrinking just to maintain familiarity. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. Because when identity becomes clear, compromise becomes uncomfortable. And that is exactly what is happening within you. You are no longer willing to abandon yourself to maintain connection. You are no longer willing to ignore your inner knowing just to keep things the same. You are no longer willing to operate from a version of yourself that you have already outgrown. And this is where your power begins to stabilize. Because identity is the foundation of everything. Your decisions come from it. Your boundaries come from it. Your direction comes from it. And once it becomes clear, everything else becomes easier. But here is what you must understand. This new version of you will not be recognized by everyone. Some people will not understand the shift. Some will question it. Some will even resist it. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because your growth disrupts their expectations. And this is where you must remain grounded. Because identity is not validated by others. It is established within you. You do not need everyone to understand who you are becoming. You only need to remain aligned with it. And that alignment will guide everything else. Because as you continue to grow into this new identity, something begins to happen externally as well. Opportunities shift. Conversations change. Connections realign. Not by force, not by effort, but naturally. Because your internal shift begins to influence your external reality. And this is the power of identity. It does not just change how you see yourself. It changes what you attract. It changes what you tolerate. And changes what you move toward and what moves away from you. And all of this is happening because of the season you are in right now. The silence, the separation, the clarity, the battle, the reset. All of it has been preparing you for this moment. The moment where you no longer question who you are. The moment where you no longer depend on external definitions. The moment where you stand fully in alignment with yourself without hesitation. And once you reach that point, something becomes very clear. You cannot go back. Not because you are forced forward, but because you have outgrown what is behind you. So embrace this shift. Even if it feels unfamiliar. Even if it feels uncomfortable. Because this is not confusion. This is transformation. And transformation always changes identity first before anything else follows. Type "I accept who I am becoming" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1010 is now activated within your identity. There is a truth you are beginning to feel now, even if you have not fully put it into words yet. It is quiet, but it is firm. It does not rush you, but it does not leave you either. It is this knowing, this deep internal realization. You cannot go back to who you were. Not because you are being forced forward, but because something within you has already shifted too far to return. Archangel Michael stands at this threshold with you, not as one who pushes you ahead, but as one who prevents you from retreating into what no longer aligns. Because this moment you are in right now is not just about transformation, it is about transition. And transition always comes with a crossing point. A moment where the old version of you is no longer accessible in the same way. You may try to revisit it. You may even test it. returning to old conversations, old environments, old patterns of thinking or behaving, but something will feel different. Something will feel off. Something will no longer fit the way it once did. And that discomfort is not confusion. It is confirmation. Confirmation that you have changed. Because growth does not just add to you, it alters you. It rewires how you see, how you feel, how you respond. And once that shift takes place, the past can no longer hold you the same way. You may notice this most when you re-enter spaces that once felt familiar. The energy feels different. The conversations feel shallow. The dynamics feel misaligned. Not because those spaces changed, but because you did. And this is where many people struggle. Because there is a natural desire to reconnect with what is familiar, to return to what feels known, to re-establish comfort. But comfort is not always alignment, and familiarity is not always purpose. You are being shown this now not to isolate you from your past, but to help you understand it, to see it clearly, without attachment, without distortion, without the need to return to it just to feel grounded, because you are no longer grounded in what is behind you. You are grounded in what is forming within you, and that changes how you move forward, because now you are not seeking to go back. You are learning how to go forward without losing yourself, and that requires acceptance. Acceptance that not everything will come with you. Acceptance that not everyone will understand your shift. Acceptance that certain connections may never feel the same again. And that is not loss. That is evolution. Because every level of growth requires a level of release. And what you are releasing now is the version of yourself that could only exist in your previous environment. It carried you to this point, but it cannot carry you further. And that is why the return feels different. Because you are no longer the same person trying to re-enter those spaces. You are someone new stepping back briefly only to recognize how much has changed. And once you see it clearly, something inside you settles. You stop questioning the shift. You stop trying to force reconnection where alignment is no longer present. You stop attempting to recreate what naturally dissolved. Because you understand now it was not meant to continue. And that realization brings a different kind of peace. Not the comfort of familiarity, but the clarity of truth. A peace that allows you to move forward without needing to carry the past with you. A peace that allows you to honor what was without trying to relive it. A peace that allows you to stand fully in who you are becoming without hesitation. This is the threshold, the moment where you fully recognize you have changed. And there is no going back, only forward. But forward does not mean uncertain. It means aligned. It means intentional. It means guided by everything that has been built within you during this season. So do not resist this realization. Do not try to force yourself into spaces that no longer reflect who you are. Do not shrink to reconnect with what you have already outgrown. Because what is ahead of you requires the version of you that exists now, not the version you used to be. And once you accept that fully, something powerful happens. You stop looking back for direction, and you start moving forward with clarity. I move forward without looking back in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1111 is now activated along your path. There comes a moment, quiet, unmistakable, and deeply sacred, when the silence begins to shift again. Not in the way it did before, where everything was taken from you, but in a new way, where something begins to be released through you. This is the moment where isolation ends and assignment begins. Because you were never pulled away just to sit in stillness forever. You were pulled away to be prepared. Prepared for what comes next. Prepared for what only you can carry. Prepared for an assignment that requires the version of you that has been formed in this silence. Archangel Michael does not stand beside you now as one who is shielding you from the world, but as one who is sending you back into it, with clarity, with strength, with alignment. Because what has been built within you is now ready to be lived through you. And this is where everything changes. Because when the isolation lifts, life does not return to how it was. It cannot. You do not re-enter the world as the same person. You step forward as someone who has seen clearly, who has felt deeply, who has been rebuilt intentionally. And that changes how you move. The conversations you engage in will feel different. The environments you enter will feel different. The way you respond, decide, and act will no longer be reactive. It will be aligned. Because now, you carry something you did not have before. Clarity. And clarity comes with responsibility. You will begin to notice that certain opportunities appear, ones that match the version of you that has been developed in silence. Not forced opportunities, not chaotic distractions, but aligned moments that feel steady, intentional, and clear. And you will also notice something else. You will not feel the same urgency to chase everything, because you will know. You will feel what is right. You will recognize what is aligned, and you will walk toward it without hesitation. This is what the silence prepared you for, not just to hear clearly, but to move clearly. But here's what you must understand as you step into this assignment. The world you are re-entering has not changed. But you have. And because you have changed, you must move differently within it. You cannot return to old habits. You cannot reattach to old patterns. You cannot lower your awareness just to feel comfortable again. Because the clarity you carry now is your guide. And if you ignore it, you will feel it immediately. The same way you once felt misaligned in silence, you will now feel misaligned in action if you step outside of what you know is right. This is your internal compass, and it must be trusted, because your assignment is not random. It is precise. It is intentional. It is connected to the version of you that has been shaped in this season. There are things you will do that you would not have done before. There are boundaries you will hold that you would not have held before. There are decisions you will make that reflect your growth, not your past. And all of this will feel natural, not forced, because it is aligned with who you have become. This is the difference. You are no longer trying to become. You are now operating from it. From clarity. From awareness. From identity. And this is what makes your presence powerful. Because you are no longer influenced by everything around you. You are anchored within yourself. And that anchor allows you to move through the world without losing your alignment, without losing your direction, without losing your sense of self. This is the assignment. To live from clarity, to act from awareness, to move with intention, not perfectly, but consciously, not fearfully, but confidently, not reactively, but aligned. And as you do this, something remarkable begins to unfold. Life starts to meet you where you are, not where you were, not where others expect you to be, but where you are now, aligned, grounded, clear. And this is where everything begins to open, not all at once, but in ways that make sense, in ways that feel right, in ways that confirm everything you have gone through. Because nothing in this process was wasted. Not the silence, not the separation, not the discomfort, not the battle. All of it was preparation for this moment. A moment where you step forward not as who you used to be, but as who you were always meant to become. So walk forward, not with hesitation, not with doubt, but with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have been prepared for this. Type "I step into my assignment" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1212 is now activated over your path and purpose. And as you step into this divine assignment, hear this clearly. Every seed you release into this mission becomes a flame of truth, igniting someone else's darkness. This is not about supporting a voice. This is about expanding the reach of heaven's message to souls standing at the edge of their breakthrough. The Lord declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you," not as a suggestion, but as a living command flowing through this very moment. I feel this strongly. Step forward now and sow into this work through Super Thanks or the PayPal link in the description and QR code, because your action today is part of someone else's answered prayer. What you release becomes a river that heaven multiplies, carrying light, clarity, and awakening far beyond what your eyes can see. Do not delay this act of obedience, because moments like this carry divine timing and spiritual weight. As you give, may doors open, may clarity deepen, and may your path be strengthened in ways only heaven can orchestrate. Move now, because this is not just support. This is participation in a divine mission.